И снова здравствуйте, мои уважаемые зрители.
Hello again, my dear viewers. March 19th continues in our yard. Let's move on to the situation on the fronts. What is going on here? Well, taking into account what I said this morning about how the tactics of the Russian armed forces are changing and what losses the Ukrainian armed forces are suffering today in connection with this. In fact, today the situation in the southern direction is changing dramatically in favor of the Russian troops, because the main group interfering with the Russian troops here is located in Nikolaev. She had a violently significant defeat. In fact, the Nikolaevsky garrison is largely disorganized today. The main strike forces are disabled. As I understand it, until this garrison of Ukrainian troops comes to its senses, it will no longer be able to oppose anything serious to the Russian troops. Moreover, no one absolutely guarantees that the same gifts will not arrive to other parts of the armed forces of Ukraine in this area, because the tactics of the Russian troops are already clear and unambiguous. For many days in a row we see the same thing, the Yavoriv test site, Mirefa, Nikolaev. As I understand it, it will continue to follow the developed plan. And so, with this direction it is clear. Next moment, the most important moment. It seems to me that today this is the direction of the Kurakhovo district. What's going on there? According to the information that comes to me, Marinka, already occupied by troops of the Donetsk People's Republic, cleaned up. The troops of the Donetsk People's Republic are trying to advance in the direction of Krasnogorovka and in the direction of Gornyak. The essence of this operation is to make two very convenient lines of defense, relying on the Sukhayeli River and Wolf, to get around them and go to these positions on the flanks, respectively, in the rear, and to prevent the Ukrainian armed forces from catching on to the Kurakhovo line, because further, from Kurakhovo and to Pokrovsk, there are no major water barriers, and already the Russian troops of the Donetsk People's Republic can advance in this direction more or less freely. Moreover, it is not such a task, says the fact that yesterday they began to process the southeastern suburbs of Pokrovsk with the help of artillery. In fact, Russian aviation is starting to work there. The long-range guns of the Russian artillery begin to work, suppressing those centers of resistance that have already been created by the armed forces of Ukraine. Thus, it prepares this area for the further offensive of the Russian troops and the troops of the Donetsk People's Republic on these lines. The operation to liberate Mariupol is also successfully developing. And so, as I said in the morning material, they were forced to admit, even Zelensky's full-time propagandists, who are preparing the society of Ukraine for the city to be surrendered. So that the shock is not strong, it begins to cook. Because, according to official reports, even today, not only Volnovakha is under the control of the armed forces of Ukraine, but also Mariupol. Only quite a bit, a small part is cut off. It is for this reason that the so-called Patriotic Society of Ukraine demanded that Zelensky organize a deblocking strike. It is it that is intoxicated by the reports with which it has lived in recent weeks. The fact that the enemy is detained, that Mariupol resists and is almost not surrounded, Volnovakha holding on. Of course, they have a question: why can't we help Mariupol? Yes, you can't help him. There is already agony. And even the soldiers of the garrison in Mariupol periodically receive such messages, change into civilian clothes, and try to slip out. To date, about 100 servicemen have been detained while trying to leave the Mariupol region in civilian clothes. In fact, they are already in agony. Yes, they resist, but this is agony. And this army, the official Kiev wrote off, exactly the same as in late January, early February 1943. The German authorities wrote off their army on the Volga near Stalingrad, the army of Paulus. Although in fact, for the armed forces of Ukraine, this is far from the biggest catastrophe that awaits them in the coming days. Everything suggests that in the next week the southern front from Zaporozhye to Donetsk, which is still held by the armed forces of Ukraine, will be broken through, or even destroyed. Therefore, those forces of the Russian troops, and the troops of the DPR, which will be released after the capture of Mariupol, will naturally be thrown into this direction, and here, without that, a complete disaster for the Ukrainian troops. In general, here at the moment is the most important point of the war. It is for this reason that I attach special importance to it, and that's all on this topic for now. In the next issue, an updated summary is planned, and, accordingly, what happened for the current day. Goodbye and see you next release.
Все, до свидания и до следующего выпуска.